March 8, 2008 was a perfect day for skiing at Big Mountain. Bob Daly had spent the day with his wife Leanne, his son Riley, and friends from Great Falls. Bob and Riley planned a final run over a favorite jump before leaving to ski the backside of the mountain. In 1989, Stephanie Tollefson was a track star and an all-state forward and captain of the Great Falls High girls varsity basketball team. On November 4th, she was preparing for the game against Capital, though she'd been suffering from a headache all day. Jerry Jacobson, a retired 62-year-old living in Glasgow, remembers the day in November 1998 when his hands suddenly began to go numb. Jerry had never felt like this before, and by nightfall, the sensation had spread to his feet as well. Bob Daly knew he was in trouble as soon as his skis left the jump. He'd caught too much air and landed hard in the flat below. His skis struck first, then his backside, breaking his tailbone and exploding his L1 and L2 vertebrae. Bob was in terrible pain and felt as though his legs were folded under him, when in fact he was lying flat. The ski patrol soon arrived to provide medical attention. His son Riley, overcome with fear and emotion, lay motionless on the snow. Bob was moved to an ambulance and rushed to a local hospital. Stephanie Tollefson played hard through 2/4 of her basketball game, though her headache had worsened. By the end of the first half, her head was spinning, and something was very wrong. Stephanie was helped into the trainer's room, and just before she passed out, she told her mother she felt she was losing her mind. Then Stephanie fell into a coma that would last for nearly 40 days. She was rushed first to Helena Hospital, then to Montana Deaconess Medical Center in Great Falls. Stephanie had experienced a sudden brain hemorrhage and suffered a stroke. The numbness in Jerry Jacobson's hands and feet began to consume his entire body. He was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, a disorder where the body's own immune system attacks the peripheral nervous system, resulting in muscle weakness and paralysis. Jerry was flown from his local hospital to Benefis in Great Falls. Within 3 days, he was completely paralyzed. He couldn't open his eyes. His jaw was locked open. A respirator was keeping him alive. Bob was assessed with incomplete paraplegia and was initially going to be sent to Seattle for surgery. But doctors at Benefis said they could treat him at home in Great Falls. Dr. Dale Schaefer and Dr. Michael Doobie worked together to decompress his nerves and fuse his spine. But there was a good chance Bob would remain paralyzed. Dr. Jim Hind became involved with Bob while he was still in intensive care. As an active husband, father, and business owner, Bob couldn't imagine not being able to walk. Dr. Hind explained that recovery might be possible, but that it wouldn't be easy. And it would hurt. Bob's response was, "I'll work through the pain." Bob worked through the pain. His feet began to twitch promisingly a few days after surgery. Benefis therapists began rehab with Bob, who was in a back brace, and in a short time he went from lying to sitting. Then with a walker and a few assistants, he could move from sitting to standing. He needed braces on his ankles to walk. Once he reached the point where he could take a few steps, Bob was deemed strong enough to go home. Dr. Bill Tackey recalls working with Stephanie Tollefson while she was still in the coma she'd fallen into during her basketball game. He said that Stephanie began responding slowly after being moved to the Benefis rehab unit. She suffered from weakness in her right side extremities and couldn't speak or understand language. Familiar voices and faces were mixed up in her mind, but her athleticism stuck out. It's who she was when she started her recovery. Dr. Hine believes that Stephanie's case is a good example of the types of care provided at the Benefis Rehab Unit. She needed physical therapy to improve her mobility, from crawling to standing, maintaining balance, and eventually walking. Stephanie needed occupational therapy to relearn how to perform routine tasks. She also underwent speech therapy and psychological counseling to help with her memory problems and coping with her life-changing injury. although she would still have a great deal of therapy to come, Stephanie was able to go home. Jerry Jacobson's world was dark during his total paralysis. He couldn't open his eyes or move and was in terrible pain. Jerry spent 53 days in the Benefis ICU during this time. His body was unresponsive. He had no way to communicate with his wife Dora Lou, who never left his side. His first breakthrough occurred when he opened his eyes in mid-December. Dr. Bill Tackey said Jerry needed a ventilator when he was moved to the progressive care unit. Jerry's speech therapist taught him to communicate with his wife in the only way he could, through blinking his eyes. Jerry's liver and kidneys weren't working properly, and he suffered a series of infections. His body had been so ravaged that he was asked if he wanted the ventilator turned off. Blinking his answer, Jerry declined. 4 months passed before another breakthrough. Jerry took a breath on his own one day while his respirator was being changed. Within a few weeks, he could focus his eyes, wear glasses, and read. He could move each of his little fingers about 1/4 of an inch. In 10 months, Jerry had come a long way, and on September 20th, he was moved to the Benefis Rehabilitation Unit. Dr. Hind knows what Jerry was going through. He himself had Guillain-Barré syndrome in 1992. He suffered progressive weakness and numbness in his hands, and at one point, his legs gave out from underneath him. Though he still has some numbness, Dr. Hind made a nearly full recovery. And comparing his experience to Jerry's case, Dr. Hind says, his is by far the worst of the worst. You cannot go any farther and live. The Benefis Rehabilitation Unit, commonly referred to as rehab, is where patients who have suffered a temporary or permanent disability learn how to live again. The rehab unit is a team of 67 rehab professionals. Recovery is dependent upon teamwork, a safe and spacious environment, patient and family education, and dedication. Rehab is about helping patients to regain function through daily interaction, therapeutic intervention, and education. Bob Daly went home in a wheelchair, but determined to walk again. Leanne brought him back to rehab for additional therapy every day for the next 6 months. Within a few months, Bob was running his business again. Learning to walk was an arduous but rewarding experience. Now Bob's working out every day to get stronger and ease the pain he still suffers with. And he's reached another goal as well. Within a year of his accident, Bob Daly was skiing again. Stephanie Tollefson recovered from her stroke. She continued to receive physical and speech therapy after returning home, along with an outpouring of support from her family and classmates. Stephanie graduated with honors with her high school class, and today owns her own massage therapy business. She's involved in numerous sports, from cross-country skiing to kickboxing. She also plays volleyball, and basketball is next. After 470 days in the hospital, Jerry Jacobson went home. Using a wheelchair at first, Jerry continued therapy and slowly relearned how to move. He fed himself for the first time, then dressed himself for the first time. He walked farther every day. At Christmas, Jerry attended a holiday party at the top of a 25-step flight of stairs, walking the distance on his own. Today he's active and working, and enjoying his second chance by spending time with his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.